Story recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a sci-fi and thriller movie called Duel. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. A man stands in an open field while spectators and reporters wait for tonight's duel. Beside him is a table full of weapons that he can use for the fight. Suddenly, his opponent shoots an arrow from the other side of the field, so the man dives over the table and uses it as a shield. However, the impact destroys his bow, his only long-range weapon. When he attempts to peek beyond the table, he gets shot in the chest. With no choice, he grabs a knife and runs towards his opponent, then mercilessly stabs him to death. The man looks down upon his dead opponent, who wears the same face as him. The reporter congratulates him and asks if he's the original or the double, and the man clarifies that he's the double. The man, who is a clone and just killed the original version of himself, now owns the identity of Robert Michaels. Elsewhere, Sarah orders a ton of fast food and declines her mom's calls. After binging on fast food, she watches adult movies in the dark. Suddenly, her boyfriend, Peter, calls. She pretends to be interested and composed throughout the call, but when the call gets disconnected, her mood suddenly shifts. Later on, she tells Peter that she's going to bed, but she indulges in a bottle of whiskey instead. The next day, Sarah joins her mother in a restaurant. Her mother wonders if Sarah is simply stuffing food into her mouth to avoid talking to her. Her mother then turns Sarah's attention to her old coin collection, wondering why she stopped collecting. Out of the blue, she asks why Sarah isn't happy anymore. This takes Sarah by surprise, but she responds that she is happy. Her mother continues asking questions about Sarah avoiding her, and with every question, Sarah starts swallowing coins. Soon, she chokes and vomits the coins into the table. Her mother merely says goodbye and Sarah wakes up with a pool of blood on her pillow. After cleaning up herself and her sheets, Sarah decides to see the doctor. In the reception area, the nurse asks her if the situation is an emergency, and Sarah says no, but she suddenly vomits blood on the floor. Because of this, the doctors run a series of tests on her. Later, she calls Peter, but despite Sarah's critical condition, he says that he won't be coming home yet because of an important project. Sarah does her best to keep the conversation going despite it getting awkward. As they speak, Peter's co-worker, Sam, keeps texting him. Peter explains that he went out with Sam earlier, which frustrates Sarah, given that she's in the hospital. Peter suggests that Sarah should sleep, and despite her complaining that she isn't allowed to eat or drink until her endoscopy tomorrow, Peter seems too busy with his text to listen. Sarah just gives up on the conversation. The next day, the doctor sends Sarah home because her tests are still being analyzed. Despite the doctor strictly telling her not to consume alcohol, when Sarah gets home, she chugs a beer bottle. Later on, she decides to contact Peter, but he keeps sending cold replies and doesn't even reply when she texts him, "I love you." The next day, Sarah goes to the gym, and when she gets home, she immediately calls Peter to tease him with her toned body. She also claims that she feels better, but Peter falls silent. When she asks what's wrong, Peter reveals that she's terminally ill. Sarah's doctors contacted Peter because his number is on her emergency contacts. Upon learning that she's going to die, Sarah wonders why she's not crying. Later on, the doctor confirms that Sarah has a rare and incurable stomach disease that will eventually spread all over her body. They're not sure how much time she has left, but it'll be soon. Seeing Sarah taking it too well, the doctor wonders why. Sarah notes that she doesn't want to die, but she feels like it isn't up to her. Sarah asks what other options she has, and the doctor suggests deciding what type of funeral she wants. The doctor also talks about getting a replacement to spare her loved ones from loss. With the pamphlet that the doctor gave her, Sarah contemplates getting a replacement. Later, she watches a video about the process and learns that a clone must spend time with the original person so that it can absorb their personality before they die. After this, Sarah calls the facility and schedules a consultation on her replacement procedure. The next day, while driving, Sarah cries for the first time since her diagnosis. She arrives at the replacement center and gets a consultation from an expert. When Sarah realizes that she can't afford the procedure, the consultant tells her that they have a payment plan. When she dies, the double will take over her responsibilities, and they'll be in charge of paying the cost. Because of this, Sarah finally goes for it. After waiting an hour, she finally meets her double, who sounds and looks exactly like her, except for the eye color. A coding error made the double's eyes blue, so Sarah gets a 5% discount. On the ride home, the double asks her more information about herself, like her likes and dislikes. When they get home, Sarah immediately shows the double around and tells her more details about her life. After the double looks at her picture with Peter, she puts the frame face down, so Sarah puts it up again. Sarah admits that she hasn't told Peter or her mother about getting a replacement. In fact, she's not sure if she'll tell her mother that she's sick at all. Hearing this, the double promises that she'll love Peter and Sarah's mother as she did, maybe even more. Sarah then hands her a set of clothes and notices that she doesn't have cellulite or love handles. The double adds that her clothes are loose, so she must be a size smaller than Sarah. 10 months later, Sarah remains while the double has completely taken over her life. The double becomes romantic towards Peter, even while in front of Sarah. As the two plan to go out for dinner, Peter finally notices Sarah watching them. The double apologizes for taking over the relationship and assures Sarah that she'll miss her when she dies. The double then wonders about her health, and Sarah simply explains that she has the doctor's appointment the next day. Before leaving, the double warns Sarah that they might make love when they get home. The next day, the doctor tells Sarah that she's gone into complete remission, so she's no longer dying. However, Sarah already has her double, so the doctor suggests having her decommissioned. By law, only the dying are allowed to have clones, so Sarah no longer fits in that category. As Sarah drives home afterward, she yells out in frustration. Then she turns around and decides to head to her mother's house instead. However, when she arrives, she finds Peter, her mother, and the double conversing over tea. Sarah discovers that the double has been pretending to be her while she's still alive, which wasn't the plan. With her mother confused, Sarah finally confesses that she was dying and had a replacement, but now she's in remission, so the clone will be decommissioned. Then she curses at her double because she endured that much jealousy for nothing. Because of this, Peter takes her outside. Sarah forcibly kisses him, but he doesn't respond. Peter then expresses how he's grown attached to the double, so Sarah says she can be anything he wants her to be. Peter finally let out his pent-up frustrations about the relationship, noting how Sarah is controlling and tries too hard to impress people. Because of this, Peter decides if he can't be with the double, he still doesn't want to be with Sarah. Desperately, Sarah says she loves him. Peter acknowledges this, but he doesn't love her anymore. Before he leaves, he tells her that she needs therapy. Realizing that he locked her out of her own mother's house, Sarah rings the doorbell several times, then sneaks into the back door, but her mother simply closes the blinds on her. Angered, Sarah yells that she wishes the double would be painfully decommissioned. A few days later, the double's lawyer calls Sarah and says that she has filed a motion to stay. Because of this, Sarah seeks legal advice, and her lawyer tells her that the double's plan is acceptable because she has stayed in this world long enough to establish her identity. Peter is also asking her to move out because the lease is in his name. To get her identity back, Sarah needs to duel her double to death. With this, her lawyer recommends getting combat lessons, but first they should discuss his rates. The next day, Sarah takes her things from the house. Peter tells her to take anything she wants because her double would redecorate anyway. He also reminds her to take the bloody sheets. A few days later, Sarah hires a combat trainer named Trent. Trent asks her if she wants to live and is ready to kill, and Sarah responds yes to both questions. With this, they immediately start their training. Sarah can barely keep up with him, but she doesn't give up that easily. Later on, she finally hits her limit and falls to the floor. Because of this, Trent ends their session and he lends her a DVD. That night, Sarah skips the alcohol and opts for water. Then she watches Trent's DVD and discovers that it's a gory murder movie. The next day, Sarah returns the DVD to Trent and says she understands what he wants her to get used to. Later on, she starts her training, but now she's focusing on how to kill. Trent discusses how the duel will play out, and that they're given 10 seconds to pick any of the 5 weapons provided. Any weapon can help Sarah, but it depends on using a careful yet decisive strategy. As their session ends, Trent claims that a properly trained human body is the 6th weapon, so Sarah needs to work out in her free time as well. That night, Sarah can't sleep, so she grabs a knife and hones her combat skills. A few days later, she joins a dance class where she dedicates herself to every step. She also regularly trains with Trent and does an excellent job in determining various killing strategies. As their session ends, Trent tells her that he has arranged a field trip for her next week. Before Sarah leaves, she tells Trent that she'll pay him tomorrow because she has a tight budget, but he tells her that she can pay in other ways. A few days later, Sarah receives a call from Trent, instructing her to head to a hospital mortuary. There, Sarah observes a pathologist open up the body of a deceased woman. Although she is struggling, Sarah doesn't take her eyes off the mutilated body. One day, Sarah does a roleplay on dueling with Trent. They use fake weapons and act slowly to train Sarah's decision-making skills during a duel. Sarah wins the roleplay with a garrote, but Trent later tells her to go for the gun if it's an option. The duel is a week away and Trent compliments her physical and mental improvement. This assures Sarah that she can kill her double. Later on, Sarah heads to the mall and tells the sales lady that she's looking for an outfit to dye in. Sarah explains this in detail, and the sales lady could only look at her with a concerned face. However, Sarah successfully finds her dream outfit that she won't regret dyeing in. That night, Sarah's lawyer calls and says that the duel is postponed until next month due to the bad weather. She also needs to pay support for her double for another month, but she already spent the money for the outfit. As Sarah talks to her lawyer, she also watches Robert Michael's duel on TV. The next day, Sarah meets Peter in a cafe. There, Peter apologizes for what he said, but Sarah says it's fine. However, she also clarifies that she'll do her best to kill her double. After that, Sarah calls Trent about the postponed duel and asks if she can keep training with them for another month. However, since she can't pay more, she asks about Trent's offer of another mode of payment. That night, Trent and Sarah head to the training room and she immediately takes her jacket off. However, the other mode of payment is just a hip-hop dance lesson because Trent is a terrible dancer. The next day, Trent introduces his dog to Sarah and commands her to shoot it. He assures her that she'd be putting it out of its misery because it's sick. Sarah aims a crossbow at the innocent animal, but she can't do it, which disappoints Trent. However, he's also relieved that his dog is still alive. Sarah suddenly sees her double spying on her outside, so she shoots her through the glass window. Trent gets mad at her, but Sarah runs outside to check if she shot her. To her horror, she only killed a small dog. Sarah quickly apologizes and chases her double, but she ends up on a playground. Twin girls lead Sarah to a playhouse where her double is hiding. Suddenly, the mother of the twins arrives and she takes her children away. After agreeing not to kill her, the double lets her into the playhouse. Sarah asks the double why she didn't look her in the eye when they first met. The double admits that she felt guilty because she knew she'd take over Sarah's life. Sarah stresses that there's a difference between taking over her life and stealing it, but the double argues that it's her life too. They get into an argument on whose life it really is, but in the end, the double relents and confesses that Sarah's life isn't what she expected. The double admits to finding Peter and their mother to be frustrating. Although Sarah has a bit of sympathy for her, she still plans to kill her unapologetically. With this, she stands up to leave, but her double invites her somewhere. Later on, they arrive at a support group for duel survivors. There, they listen to a duel winner who notes that despite winning, he's been traumatized by the event and can't really live the life he fought for. Sarah gets angry, thinking that her double is just trying to convince her to give up. However, her double argues that she just wants Sarah to hear stories from people who went through their situation. Seeing them argue, the support group leader begins a project and tells them to use their non-dominant hand to write a letter to either their original or double. This exercise may allow them to connect within themselves and another part of them simultaneously. Soon, everyone starts writing, but Sarah struggles to think of what she'll say. Eventually, everyone reads their letters. After the session, Sarah compliments her double's letter to her, where she depicts that their situation isn't their fault. Instead, their real enemy is the system that decides neither of them can live and pits them against each other in a spectator sport. They decide that they have a lot in common, so maybe neither of them should die and they can be together. The next day at dawn, Sarah contemplates in her apartment before taking her bag, leaving a knife she considered bringing and the outfit she chose to die in. She picks up her double and they escape town. While she drives, her double expresses how she never knew how to drive. Later on, they stop in the middle of the road and her double suggests that they should get hydrated before crossing the border. Her double hands her a water bottle and Sarah immediately gulps it down. Later on, they walk deeper into the woods and Sarah keeps babbling about the duel and how no original and double ever made it out alive together. However, her double doesn't talk but remains vigilant. Suddenly, Sarah falls silent and blood starts to drip off the side of her mouth. Her double only stares at her with no remorse for what she put in the water. Later on, Sarah arrives at the duel's venue, limping and claiming that she had car trouble. When the marshal asks where her double is, Sarah claims she doesn't know and suggests that her double fled. The police go on a search for the double, but to no avail. In the following days, she finally regains her identity in court, and she's free to go back to her life. However, Peter keeps doting on her appearance, and she gets the same annoying voicemails from her mom. Later on, she drives to work with her wrecked car and listens to her mom saying that she bought her new contact lenses, revealing that Sarah is still the double. As she struggles in driving, Sarah's double mourns over the life that she willingly killed for. When the emotion is too much, she stops in the middle of the road to weep.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.